The galaxy would later argue about why 5,000 alien warships stopped above a single human home. Some said it was revenge. Some said it was conquest. Only a few knew the truth. It began 2 years earlier, with one man opening a door when every law of survival said he should not. The planet Edros 9 was listed as uninhabitable. Too cold. Too violent. Too forgotten. Human settlers had abandoned it decades ago after mining failures and orbital storms made supply routes impossible. The snow never melted. The wind never rested. Satellites rarely survived more than a year. That was why Evan Holt lived there. Not because he wanted isolation. Because the universe had already taken everything else. Evan was a human engineer. Once. A disaster specialist. The kind of man governments called when a station was failing or a reactor was about to blow. He fixed impossible problems until one day, he couldn't fix the one that mattered. After that, he disappeared. A small cabin. One fusion heater. Recycled water. Old tools. No neighbors. No future. Just survival, one day at a time. On the night everything changed, Evan was repairing a windshield when the storm alarm screamed. Not the normal kind. This storm had movement. Something was out there. Evan grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch. Visibility was almost zero, white snow slicing sideways like knives. His thermal scanner flickered, then showed 2 heat signatures. Too small. Too weak. Not predators. Damn it, Evan muttered. No one should be alive out there. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. Crying. He followed it past the sensor line, boots sinking deep into snow, every step burning. 20 meters out, he saw them. 2 alien girls. They were not human, but close enough to feel wrong in the snow. Pale blue skin. Thin limbs. Hair frozen stiff with ice crystals. One was dragging the other, who was unconscious. They were dying. The older one collapsed when she saw him. She tried to raise her head. Failed. Please, she whispered in broken trade speech. Shelter, just a little. Behind them, the storm howled louder. Evan froze. Aliens meant trouble. Bounties. Politics. War. Helping them meant being seen. Being seen meant death. The rational choice was clear. Evan turned away. 3 steps. That was all he made. Then he remembered the sound of another storm, years ago. Another emergency. Another life he failed to save because he waited too long. He swore under his breath and turned back. All right, he said sharply. You win. He lifted the unconscious girl first. She was frighteningly light. Her skin was ice cold. He barely felt a pulse. The older one stared at him like he was a miracle, or a mistake. Move, Evan ordered. Now. They barely made it to the cabin. The door sealed. Heat rushed in. Evan laid the younger girl near the heater and ripped open a med kit. The alien physiology scan went wild. Of course you're complicated, Evan muttered. He improvised. Human medicine. Thermal blankets. Controlled warming. Manual circulation. He worked with the focus of a man who had done this too many times before. The older sister knelt nearby, shaking violently. She will live, Evan said finally. If she wants to. The girl bowed her head. My name is Lyra, she said. She is Neri's. We are not supposed to be here. No kidding. Lyra looked up sharply. You should not help us. If they find us. I already helped, Evan cut in. Finish your sentence. Lyra swallowed. They will kill you. Evan didn't reply. He just stoked the heater and handed her a cup of hot liquid. Drink. She hesitated. It's water, he said flatly. Relax. She drank. Her hands stopped shaking. Hours passed. Neris breathed. Evan stayed awake all night. At dawn, Lyra finally spoke again. We are hunted, she said quietly. Our people were betrayed. We escaped. Only us. By who? Lyra hesitated. By an empire that believes humans are weak. Evan laughed once. Short. Bitter. Yeah, he said. They're not alone. For 3 days, the sisters stayed. For 3 days, Evan expected scanners, ships, soldiers. None came. By the end of the week, Neres could walk. By the end of the month, Evan had upgraded his defenses. By the end of the first year, the sisters no longer looked like refugees. They looked like survivors. Evan taught them what humans always taught each other in the dark corners of space. How to build. How to fix. How to adapt. How to hide. How to fight smarter, not harder. He never asked for payment. Lyra never forgot that. 2 years later, Evan Holt stood on the same porch, older, sharper, watching the sky turn black. Not with clouds. With ships. 5,000 alien warships dropped out of hyperspace above his cabin. Every weapon armed. Every sensor locked. Every empire watching. Inside the cabin, Lyra closed her eyes. They found us, she whispered. Evan checked his rifle, calm as stone. No, he said. They came for you. The first thing Evan Holt noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The wrong kind. No wind. No atmospheric scream. Idros 9 storms didn't stop naturally. They were constant, violent, eternal. Yet now the sky above his cabin was still, frozen in submission beneath the shadow of 5,000 warships. Each vessel was massive. Layered armor. Spinal cannons. Fleet carriers bristling with smaller strike craft. An armada meant to crush worlds. And it was hovering over him. Evan's cabin alarms lit up in red. Radiation spikes. Gravitational distortion. Sensor locks stacking one after another like fingers tightening around a throat. Lyra stood near the window, her hands clenched, her breathing controlled with visible effort. They are the Varel Dominion, she said. They do not come to negotiate. Neres, now taller and stronger than the dying child Evan had carried through the snow, stared upward in silent awe and fear. They brought the full fleet, she whispered. For us. Evan shook his head slowly. No, he said. For what you became. The first transmission came without warning. No greeting. No diplomacy. Just authority. Human settler. Identify yourself. Surrender the Venery sisters. Compliance will be merciful. Evan leaned back in his chair. See, he muttered, that word always worries me. Lyra turned to him sharply. Evan, they will glass this region. They will not stop. This is my fault. Evan looked at her. Really looked. 2 years ago, she had been a terrified fugitive dragging her dying sister through hell. Now she stood straight, eyes sharp, mind calculating possibilities even in fear. No, Evan said. It's not. He walked to the old console built into the cabin wall. The technology was crude by galactic standards, patched together from scavenged parts, human ingenuity, and a few creative upgrades Lyra and Neres had quietly added. Evan opened a channel. This is Evan Holt, he said calmly. You're in my airspace. The response was immediate. You claim ownership of this planet. No, Evan replied. Just the ground you're hovering over. There was a pause. Lyra's breath caught. 5,000 ships didn't pause for anyone. You will stand down. Evan smiled faintly. You already know I won't. Behind the scenes, something else was happening. Across the galaxy, dormant systems stirred. Old signals, human signals, long ignored or dismissed as primitive noise, began to activate. Emergency beacons. Private channels. Dead frequencies. Not military. Personal. Evan tapped a key. Deep beneath the cabin, something woke up. A vibration passed through the ground, subtle but unmistakable. Neres felt it first. What did you do? She asked. Asked for help, Evan replied. Lyra stared at him. From who? Evan's expression darkened, Not with fear, but memory. From humans who don't like bullies. The Dominion fleet repositioned. Cannons aligned. Fighters deployed in precise formation. The Varel commander appeared on screen, a towering figure of angular armor and glowing eyes. "You have seconds." Lyra stepped forward. "I will go," she said. "Spare him. He owes us nothing." Evan didn't look at her. "Sit down." "Evan." That wasn't a suggestion. She froze. Evan finally turned to face the screen. "You came here thinking this was a rescue mission," he said. "You're wrong." The Varel commander tilted its head. "Explain." "You tracked them," Evan continued. "But you forgot something." He tapped the console again. The sky cracked. Not with sound, but with space itself tearing open. One ship appeared. Then another. Then dozens. Human ships. Old designs. New modifications. Civilian hulls reinforced with illegal plating. Mining rigs converted into gun platforms. Cargo haulers bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist. They dropped out of hyperspace in chaotic, imperfect formation. Unorganized. Unpolished. Terrifying. The Dominion fleet hesitated. Evan spoke softly. "Humans don't build fleets to look impressive," he said. "We build them to work." More ships arrived. Hundreds. Then thousands. Not under one banner. Not one government. No empire. Just humans who had answered a call. Pirates. Traders. Engineers. Ex-soldiers. Colonists. Survivors. Every one of them carried a message burned into their systems. A human asked for help. The Varel commander's voice sharpened. "This is illegal assembly." Evan laughed. "Welcome to humanity." Lyra stared in disbelief. "They came for you." "No," Evan corrected. "They came because someone tried to take something from a human." The first shots were fired by the Dominion. They always were. Beams lanced downward. They never reached the ground. Invisible barriers flared into existence, human shields powered by stolen alien tech and raw stubborn genius. Evan hadn't just survived on Idros 9. He had prepared. The human fleet surged forward, not in rigid lines, but in unpredictable swarms. They jammed sensors, spoofed targeting systems, sacrificed smaller ships to create openings. Human tactics. Messy. Effective. Neres watched in awe. "They fight like chaos." Evan nodded. "That's because we are." Lyra felt something shift inside her, something she hadn't felt since before her world burned. Hope. Not elegant hope. Not noble hope. The kind forged in defiance. The Varel commander's voice returned, strained now. "Withdraw your forces." Evan leaned forward. "Apologize." Silence. Then, a single Varel ship exploded. Not from human fire. From inside. Lyra gasped. That was their flagship. Evan's eyes narrowed. "No," he said quietly. "That was Neres." She looked at him, stunned. "You gave her access," Lyra whispered. "I taught her how humans think," Evan replied. "She figured out the rest." Neres swallowed hard, hands trembling over the console. "They underestimated human systems," she said. "They always do." The sky burned. And for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Humanity didn't need to rule the stars. They only needed to show up. The battle above Idros 9 did not end quickly. That was the first mistake the Varel Dominion made. They expected a decisive strike. Overwhelming force. Fear. They did not expect humans to turn time itself into a weapon. Evan watched the tactical overlay flicker as ships moved, vanished, reappeared. Human vessels didn't hold formation. They flowed. They broke apart, reformed, hid inside debris fields, used gravity wells like slingshots. The Dominion fleet was stronger. The human fleet was smarter. And more stubborn. Inside the cabin, Lyra felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest. They will not stop, she said. The Varel believe retreat is weakness. Evan nodded. That's their second mistake. Another explosion lit the sky. A Dominion cruiser split in half as a mining rig rammed its engines straight through the hull before detonating. Neres flinched. That ship had thousands aboard. So do ours, Evan said quietly. This isn't clean. It never is. Lyra turned to him sharply. You could still surrender us. End this. Evan finally looked angry. No, he said. I don't trade people. Something passed between them then, understanding mixed with grief. Because Lyra knew that tone. It was the voice of someone who had already lost too much. A warning alert chimed. Neres froze. They've adapted. They're bypassing our signal noise. Evan's jaw tightened. How long? Minutes, she said. Maybe less. Above them, the Varel fleet shifted formation. Heavy carriers moved inward, protected by layered shields. They were learning. That was the problem with enemies who survived humans. They learned fast. A new transmission cut through all channels, this one broadcast wide, not just to the cabin. This is Admiral K.A. Rath of the Varel Dominion. The armored alien appeared again, its voice now cold and deliberate. Humans. You have proven. Inconvenient. Human channels exploded with chatter, laughter, curses. K.A. Rath continued. We offer terms. Evan scoffed. Here it comes. Withdraw your fleet. Surrender the two Venery sisters. This world will be spared. Lyra felt her knees weaken. Neres whispered, they're offering mercy. Evan stood slowly. No, he said. They're offering control. He opened a private channel. This is Evan Holt, he said. I decline. K.A. Ratha's eyes burned brighter. You will doom this species. Evan smiled sadly. You don't understand humans, he said. We doom ourselves. You just got caught in it. The Dominion responded immediately. They targeted the planet. Orbital cannons charged. Lyra screamed. Evan, the shield won't hold. I know. Evan pressed one final command. Deep beneath the ice, something ancient and human came online. The Atlas Array. A planetary-scale system Evan had spent 2 years building in secret, using forgotten human blueprints and alien power cells salvaged from wrecks. It wasn't a weapon. It was worse. The planet's gravity surged. Dominion ships shuddered violently. Fighters lost formation. Massive carriers struggled to stabilize as artificial gravity spiked beyond tolerance. Human ships were affected too. But humans had prepared. They had adapted. They always did. The Dominion fleet panicked. K.A. Rath roared in fury. You would destroy your own world. Evan's voice was steady. It was dead before I got here. The first Dominion carrier slammed into orbit debris and tore itself apart. Another lost power and spiraled toward the planet, burning like a falling star. But the strain was too much. Alarms screamed inside the cabin. Neres shouted, the array is destabilizing. If it collapses. Evan already knew. The planet would crack. Everyone would die. Lyra grabbed his arm. Stop it. We can still. Evan gently removed her hand. This is where humans are different, he said. We don't win by being stronger. He looked at Neres. You can shut it down, he said. But you have to choose. Neres stared at him, tears forming. If I do, they'll regroup. They'll come back. Evan nodded. Yes. Lyra's voice broke. Then why? Evan met her eyes. Because mercy is a weapon too. Neres slammed the override. The gravity field collapsed smoothly, releasing both fleets. Silence fell over space. The Varel fleet retreated, damaged, humiliated, but alive. Human ships held position. No one fired. K.A. Ratha's transmission returned. Quieter now. This is not over. Evan leaned back. No, he said. It's begun. The Dominion fleet jumped to hyperspace. They fled. Lyra sank to the floor, shaking. You spared them, she whispered. Why? Evan stared at the darkening sky. Because now, he said, they'll tell everyone what happens when you push humans too far, and when we still let you live. Nerys looked up at him with something like awe. You taught me that, she said. Evan smiled faintly. Good, he replied. Because next time, I might not be here. The words hung heavy in the air. Outside, human ships began to depart, one by one, without ceremony, without thanks. They had shown up. That was enough. Lyra felt it then. This wasn't about hiding anymore. This was about consequence. Far across the galaxy, empires would talk. They would whisper. They would remember. And somewhere in that fear, humanity's legend would grow. The silence after battle was worse than the battle itself. Idros 9's sky returned to its natural state, violent winds, swirling ice, and endless grey, but something fundamental had changed. The planet felt watched. Not by enemies. By history. Inside the cabin, Evan Holt sat heavily in his chair. The Atlas array was shut down. The power readings were stable. His hands, however, were shaking. Lyra noticed. You're hurt, she said, stepping closer. Evan shook his head. No. Just tired. That was a lie. But it was a human lie, the kind meant to keep others steady. Nerys stood by the console, scrolling through long-range scans. Her face had gone pale again, but not from fear. They're coming back, she said quietly. Lyra froze. The Varel. Nerys shook her head slowly. No. Everyone. She turned the display outward. Space bent. Hyperspace ruptures opened across the sky like glowing wounds. Not one. Not 10. Thousands. Ships emerged, vast, ancient, elegant, terrifying. Different designs. Different technologies. Different empires. And they all stopped. Every single one. 5,000 warships formed a silent ring around Evan's small cabin. Not in attack formation. In orbit of respect. Lyra's breath caught. That's the entire coalition rim. Nerys whispered, they're not locking weapons. Evan stood slowly. They're waiting. A transmission request appeared. Then another. Then hundreds. Evan accepted the strongest signal. A new figure appeared, tall, luminous, its form shifting with layered light. An elder species. One of the first civilizations. Human Evan Holt, the being said. We acknowledge you. Lyra's knees almost gave out. Acknowledgement from the first was not honor. It was judgment. Evan didn't bow. Then talk, he said. I don't have all day. A ripple passed through the assembled fleets. Shock. Amusement. Fear. The first spoke again. You defied the Varel Dominion. You disrupted a sanctioned reclamation. You wielded planetary forces without permission. Evan crossed his arms. And you're here because... A pause. Because you spared them. Lyra frowned. Spared them. The being's gaze shifted to her and Nerys. For 10,000 cycles, power has meant extinction. When one species gains dominance, another vanishes. It turned back to Evan. You had the ability to annihilate a Dominion fleet. Instead, you chose mercy. Evan's voice hardened. I chose control. There's a difference. Another pause. Longer this time. Explain. Evan gestured toward the cabin, the storm, the planet. I live here because the universe taught me something, he said. If all you know is fear, then fear is all you spread. Kill everyone who threatens you, and sooner or later, you're alone. He met the first's glowing eyes. Humans survive because we choose when not to destroy. Silence rolled across space. Lyra felt it, millions of minds processing a concept that didn't fit their models. The first finally spoke. The Varel Dominion has issued a galaxy-wide alert. Neres stiffened. About what? The first's voice lowered. About humanity. Evan raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Unstable. Dangerous. Do not provoke. Incorrect, the being replied. They declared humans unpredictable beyond calculation. A quiet murmur spread through the fleets. That word, unpredictable, was feared more than hostile. The first continued. They claim humanity is capable of restraint even at absolute advantage. Evan smirked faintly. High praise. Lyra suddenly understood. They're afraid, she said softly. Not because humans are cruel, but because humans choose. The first inclined its head. Yes. Another transmission cut in, this one harsh, wounded, unmistakably Varel. Admiral K.A. Rath appeared again. His armor was cracked. His eyes burned with fury and something else. Reluctant respect.
Human, Gareth said.
The Dominion withdraws its claim. Lyra gasped. Neres whispered, they're surrendering jurisdiction. K.A. Rath continued. The Venery sisters are no longer targets. He looked directly at Lyra and Neres. You are released. Then he turned back to Evan. But know this. Your species has altered the balance. Evan nodded once. Good. The Varel transmission cut. The first remained. What will you do now, human? Evan looked around his small cabin. The heater. The tools. The life he'd built from nothing. Then he looked at Lyra and Neres. Teach, he said simply. Lyra stared at him. Teach, what? How to survive humans, Evan replied. And how to be better than us. Neres felt something ignite in her chest. Hope again. Not fragile this time. Forged. The first spoke one last time. Then understand this, Evan Holt. From this moment forward, humanity is no longer ignored. You are observed. The fleets began to withdraw. One by one. Empire by empire. Until only human ships remained, and then even they vanished, slipping quietly back into the dark. The storm returned. The cabin stood alone again. Lyra exhaled shakily. You just scared the galaxy. Evan sat back down. Good, he said. It needed it. Neres looked at the sky, then at him. They'll come again, she said. Evan smiled faintly. Yeah, he replied. But next time, they won't come to fight. The galaxy did not change overnight. That was the first lesson Lyra learned after the fleets left. Empires still argued. Borders still burned. Power still corrupted. The universe did what it had always done, consume the weak and reward the ruthless. But something had shifted. On Idros 9, the storms screamed as they always had. Ice buried the land. Winds shattered stone. And yet, ships began to arrive. Not warships. Small ones. Old ones. Curious ones. They came carefully, respectfully, staying at the edge of the sensor line. They sent messages instead of demands. Questions instead of threats. Evan ignored most of them. You can't save the galaxy, he told Lyra one night as they watched snow bury a newly landed shuttle. You can only teach a few not to burn it. Lyra nodded. She understood that now. Neres understood it better. She stood taller these days. Moved with quiet confidence. The child who once froze in the snow was gone. In her place stood someone dangerous, not because she wanted power, but because she understood systems. Human systems. Evan had taught her well. How many this week? Evan asked. Neres checked the terminal. 7 delegations. 2 traders. 1 researcher. 3 refugees. Lyra's breath caught at the last word. Refugees had a sound to them. A look. She knew it. Evan closed his eyes briefly. Send them coordinates for the southern ridge shelters. Supplies only. No weapons. Neres hesitated. What if they lie? Evan opened his eyes. Calm. Certain. Then they learn what humans mean by consequences. That was the balance he taught. Mercy, with limits. Months passed. The cabin grew into something more. Not a base. Not a fortress. A school. No banners. No announcements. No empire. Just knowledge passed quietly from human to alien, from survivor to survivor. How to adapt. How to improvise. How to resist control without becoming a monster. And most importantly, how to choose. The galaxy watched. Some feared this place. Others hoped it would burn. None dared attack it. Because stories had spread. Stories of a human who had faced 5,000 warships and told them no. Stories of a species that could destroy, and chose restraint. That scared the galaxy more than any weapon. One evening, years later, Lyra stood at the edge of the ridge, staring at the stars. Neres joined her, holding a data slate. They're calling it something now, Neres said. Lyra sighed. They always do. The Holt Doctrine. Lyra blinked. That's ridiculous. Neres smiled faintly. They say it's the rule humans live by. Lyra raised an eyebrow. And what rule is that? Neres read aloud. When faced with absolute power, humans do not ask what they can destroy. They ask what they must protect. Lyra felt a tightening in her chest. That's Evan, she said softly. Behind them, Evan Holt watched from the cabin doorway, unnoticed. His hair was grayer now. His hands slower. His body paying the price of years lived hard and honest. He knew his time was coming. Humans always did. That night, the storms were louder than usual. Evan didn't wake the sisters when he left the cabin. He walked out into the snow alone, breathing deeply, feeling the cold bite his skin. He liked it. It reminded him he was alive. He reached the ridge and looked up at the stars one last time. So, he murmured. You're still watching. No answer came. That was fine. Humans didn't need applause. When Lyra found him the next morning, the storm had buried everything in white. Evan Holt lay still, face peaceful, eyes closed. Gone. The galaxy felt it. Not immediately. Not dramatically. But something settled. Ships paused mid-journey. Old enemies hesitated before firing. Commanders delayed decisions by seconds, sometimes long enough to choose differently. Because somewhere in their memory was a story. Of a man. Of a door opened in a storm. Of 5,000 warships that came to intimidate, and left in silence. Lyra stood over Evan's grave, carved into ice and stone. We will keep it, she whispered. What you taught us. Neres placed a hand over her heart. We will choose, she said. Years later, when the first Human-Alien Council formed, they did not meet on a capital world. They met on Edros 9. On a frozen planet the universe had given up on. Because that was where humanity had proven its greatest strength. Not firepower. Not dominance. But the terrifying, beautiful ability to open a door when the universe expected them to lock it. And the galaxy never forgot that.